Welcome to Skytech-Lens. For generations, Maine's rugged coast has been defined by one creature, the American lobster. More than a delicacy, it's the backbone of coastal communities, a heritage built on early mornings, rough seas, and family tradition. The lobster industry is a billion-dollar enterprise, supporting thousands of jobs and keeping small towns afloat. This deep reliance, however, made the industry vulnerable to global shocks. As international demand grew, Maine's fishermen became players on a volatile global stage, subject to trade disputes and shifting policies. Their success tied them to forces far beyond their control. Soon, the very trade that brought prosperity would threaten to unravel their way of life. The shift was sudden. As American exports stalled, Canadian lobster exporters, especially from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, seized the moment. They secured long-term contracts with European and Asian buyers who had just left their American suppliers. Cargo planes now flew from Halifax, not Boston, loaded with Canadian lobster. Canadian processing plants expanded, hiring more staff to meet surging demand. European importers seeking reliability and lower prices quickly favored Canada. The difference wasn't in the lobster, it was in the trade agreements. Canada's diplomatic groundwork paid off, while U.S. protectionism backfired. The crown of the North Atlantic lobster trade quietly passed north. Canada's dominance was built on two key trade deals: CETA with the EU and the CPTPP with Pacific Rim nations. CETA eliminated tariffs on Canadian lobster, making it cheaper for European buyers overnight. The CPTPP opened Asian markets, slashing tariffs and giving Canadian exporters a crucial edge. Years of patient negotiation paid off, providing stability and confidence for Canadian businesses to expand. The result: Canadian lobster became the preferred choice in nearly every major market outside the U.S. It was a masterclass in how trade policy can reshape an industry. The global lobster map was redrawn before a single trap was set. Meanwhile, American lobster faced tariffs in Europe and a devastating 25% duty in China. European buyers chose Canadian lobster for its lower price, while China's retaliatory tariffs shut out Maine's catch. Years of building overseas markets vanished almost overnight. Maine's exporters were caught in a trade war they didn't start, blocked by tariffs beyond their control. With exports collapsing, a glut of lobster flooded the U.S. market, driving prices down. Fishermen struggled as costs rose and profits shrank. The foundation of their business, global demand, was shattered. Their world-class product was trapped by international politics. The invisible barriers of trade policy proved more formidable than the sea. The numbers tell the story. By 2021, Canada's lobster exports soared to $3.26 billion, nearly 37% of its seafood sales. U.S. exports lagged at just $459 million. In China, Canadian lobster claimed 76% of the live market. The U.S. share shrank to 25%. Maine lost access to key markets, leaving 80 million pounds of lobster with nowhere to go. Prices at the dock plummeted, squeezing everyone in the supply chain. In Canada, the industry boomed, fueling investment, jobs, and aggressive marketing. For every dollar lost in Maine, a dollar was gained in the Maritimes. The trade war's winner was clear in the balance sheets. Behind the numbers is a human story of loss in Maine's coastal towns. These are places where the rhythm of life has always been set by the tides and the catch, where generations have depended on the sea not just for their livelihoods, but for their sense of belonging. The impact of economic hardship here is not just financial, it's deeply personal, woven into the fabric of daily life. Generations of lobstermen faced anxiety and despair as prices fell below sustainable levels. The docks, once bustling with activity and laughter, grew quieter. Young and old alike watched as their hard work seemed to count for less and less, their futures clouded by uncertainty. The pride that came from a good day's haul was replaced by worry about how to make ends meet. Local businesses suffered, and the sense of community pride faded. Shops that had served fishermen for decades closed their doors, unable to survive the downturn. Main streets that once buzzed with neighbors and friends became eerily quiet, as fewer people could afford to spend or invest in their own communities. The industry's decline threatened not just incomes but a way of life and identity. For many, lobstering is more than a job, it's a family tradition, a source of pride, and a connection to the past. The sight of idle boats and empty traps was a painful reminder of what was at stake. Fishermen, once proud stewards of the sea, felt powerless, caught in a conflict far beyond their control. The uncertainty weighed heavily on their shoulders as they wondered if their skills and knowledge, passed down through generations, would be enough to weather this storm. Families faced tough choices, cutting back on essentials, taking on second jobs, or considering leaving the only life they'd ever known. Younger generations questioned their future, while veterans wondered if they could retire with dignity. The uncertainty touched every member of the family, from children to grandparents. Some sold their boats, ending family traditions that had lasted for decades, sometimes even centuries. The decision to walk away was never easy, but for some, it was the only option left. Dinner table conversations turned from the day's catch to unpaid bills. The joy of sharing stories about the sea was replaced by the stress of making ends meet, as families tried to find hope in the face of mounting challenges. The trade war's true cost was measured in sleepless nights and broken dreams. For Maine's fishing families, the struggle was not just about dollars and cents, it was about holding on to a way of life, and the hope that one day, the tides might turn in their favor again. As Maine's crisis deepened, the lobster became a political symbol. President Trump visited Maine, promising to fight for lobstermen and punish unfair trade partners. The administration's tough talk brought hope, but little changed. Temporary deals with the EU offered brief relief, but Canada's structural advantages remained. In China, tariffs stayed in place. The lobster's political status made it a key issue in elections, with candidates pledging to save the industry. Federal aid helped, but couldn't restore lost markets. The lobster's journey from ocean to political battleground was complete. The conflict between the US and Canada over lobster didn't just stop at tariffs. It quickly escalated into a complex web of subsidies, regulations, and strategic marketing, with both sides determined to outmaneuver the other. What began as a straightforward trade dispute soon became a high-stakes battle involving government intervention, industry lobbying, and public relations campaigns. In response to mounting pressure, the U.S. government allocated $80 million in aid to Maine's lobster industry, aiming to cushion the blow from lost markets and increased competition. Not to be outdone, Canada responded with its own support packages, ensuring their fishermen could weather the storm and keep their boats on the water. This set off a subsidy race, with each country determined to protect its iconic industry and the livelihoods of thousands of coastal families. The rivalry was no longer just about economics, it was about national pride and the future of entire communities. But the battle didn't end there. Environmental concerns soon entered the fray. The U.S. raised alarms about the endangered North Atlantic right whale, using these concerns to justify new restrictions on some Canadian lobster imports. Conservation groups joined the debate, demanding stricter protections and adding another layer of complexity to the dispute. Canada countered with a wave of marketing campaigns, positioning its lobster as not only delicious but also sustainably sourced and eco-friendly. Billboards, commercials, and social media posts all highlighted the country's commitment to responsible fishing practices, hoping to sway environmentally conscious consumers. The competition shifted from the docks to the marketplace, as both countries raced to brand their lobster as the responsible, ethical choice. Packaging, labels, and advertising all became tools in the fight for consumer trust and loyalty. Scientific research and public relations became just as important as price and quality. Both sides invested in studies to prove their sustainability claims, while PR teams crafted messages to shape public opinion and influence policy. Now, the humble lobster was judged not just on taste and cost, but also on its environmental credentials. Consumers weighed their choices carefully, looking for eco-labels and sustainability information before making a purchase. The lobster trade war had evolved into a multi-front conflict, fought in boardrooms, laboratories, and the media, with press releases and public perception proving just as powerful as tariffs and subsidies. The North Atlantic Lobster War reveals the complexity of today's global economy, where the fate of a single species can ripple across continents and industries. What might seem like a simple competition between fishermen is, in reality, a high-stakes contest shaped by international trade, shifting political alliances, and the urgent demands of environmental protection. Success in this arena isn't just about who hauls in the biggest catch. It's about navigating a maze of trade policies, leveraging political influence, and demonstrating a commitment to environmental stewardship. Every lobster pulled from the sea is part of a much larger story, one that involves diplomats, regulators, and activists, all vying to shape the future of the industry. Canada's recent victory was no accident. It was the culmination of years of careful planning, investment in sustainable practices, and a willingness to embrace liberalized trade. By opening new markets and building strong international relationships, Canada positioned itself as a leader in the global seafood trade, reaping the rewards of foresight and adaptability. Meanwhile, political support in the United States brought much-needed aid to struggling fishermen, but even generous subsidies and vocal advocacy couldn't overcome the constraints of entrenched trade agreements and shifting consumer preferences. The rules of the game had changed, and not everyone was prepared. Environmental regulations added yet another layer of complexity. Both sides raced to meet new standards, hoping to secure the coveted green label that would open doors to lucrative markets. For many, the challenge was not just catching lobster, but proving that their methods protected fragile marine ecosystems and respected international conservation goals. In this new era, the future belongs to the nation that can deliver a competitively priced, sustainable product and market it effectively to a global audience. It's not enough to fish. You must also convince the world that your catch is the right choice for both dinner plates and the planet. The lobster war stands as a powerful lesson. In the 21st century, the most important catch is secured, not just through hard work at sea, but through policy, innovation, and strategic vision. Those who adapt will thrive, while others risk being left behind. As of 2025, Canada leads the way, while Maine's fishermen face a new reality, one shaped by forces far beyond the tides, where success depends on the ability to navigate a world where trade, politics, and ecology are forever intertwined. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.